so welcome everyone, and welcome Natalie to the call. Thank you for joining with me today.
Hey, hi.
Hi. I'm so glad to have you with me and to share you with my community because you're my clairvoyant in a way. What people may not know is that as a practicing clairvoyant, I like to get clairvoyant readings as well. And you're one of my go-to people. So I've had a couple of readings with you in some times that I've been going through transition. I think actually both times that I was leaving a school in my teaching career and really just focusing on my business, you were my person to go to. And we've known each other for many years now. We met through Rhythm Sanctuary Dance Community. And Burning Man community. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Let me make sure that's okay. And so, thank you so much for joining with us. I also just want to let everyone know that I'm 7 months pregnant. So I feel like my breath capacity is at 50%. And I feel like I may be huffing and puffing a little. So just to let everyone who might be watching know that. So welcome, thank you for joining us, and why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are in the world, what you do, and how you see yourself.
Thanks, Rachel. I agree. I'm a big believer in, you got to do your work if you can help other people with their work. I mean, I'm constantly on my own journey of self-reflection around, vulnerability and openness and accepting the waves of what come in life, right? So I love trading with you and the sharing of that clairvoyant gift. And let's see, your question again.
So how do you view yourself? When people ask you what you are or what you do, what do you say?
Oh, that's always sort of fun because I work both in the analytical mind and the intuitive mind, and I love both of them and having a balance in my life. So I am a clairvoyant. I feel like my work is around looking at people's soul agreements and their soul records, and specifically when I'm working with a client, I'm sort of looking at their energy field around whatever question they might ask me. It could be, well, a lot of times, the people want to know about love, about money, about their health, about their home, about, all these really essential things. But then, every single one is intricate in its unique ways it affects a person's life. And the question behind the question is always, I'd like things to be going a little better than it is right now.
Right.
So when I'm doing my work, I see myself as helping them release unconscious blocks on a spiritual level. We all need to do our psychological work and change habits in real life, but and do the physical part that's around taking care of our body. But the soul work, the clairvoyant work, is really about moving those blocks out, bringing them to the light by just seeing them, so that we can make more room for what's possible in our lives. Because to me, that's what drives me forward in doing my own work and inspires me in helping people with their work, is creating more possibility. The more we release the old stuff that we're not even conscious about, that our parents unconsciously taught us, or society, or past lives, the more we get to be us and create something new and fun and vibrant and more peaceful. In terms of the inner peace,
Yeah, I love that. That's so great. And you do a lot of work. You've been working on writing a lot about soul agreements and soul contracts. And I love that so much. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what that is from your perspective?
Yeah, I'd love to. Writing has always been my first creative passion since I was a little kid. I grew up on a ranch in Oregon, so a lot of when we weren't working, I would wander around in the woods and lay in the fields and write poetry and think about stuff. And so I'm always really motivated to write about what I believe and think and share that with others. And the soul agreement is we're humans interacting with all these other souls, right? It's never isolated. We think, let's manifest something, but we're also interacting with all these other people that are making choices and affecting what's possible for us. And we're choosing to be around certain types of people. And then there's things that are happening in the physical world environment that affect us, and the economic environment. And there's all these different energies and relationships in the animal world that we encounter. And that's why we're here, right, in a body, as why we came as a soul into a body, is to experience that. And if I could quit worrying so much about accomplishing something or a purpose, and just sort of start realizing that, hey, we're here in this body, and our body gets to have all these experiences, and then choose to release things that are in the way of our soul really enjoying this experience and enjoying being present. So I write a lot about how those relationships work, whether it's lovers or business, your workspace, your family. Those are always really juicy soul agreements. I just did a blog post on that. Our relationships with spiritual entities, angels, past, deceased loved ones. We have these soul agreements that help us, and that also are to complete karmic agreements, promises we've made or unresolved experiences. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so great. And I love how you, in the readings that I've had with you, often we'll go into past life, looking at some of the agreements and contracts with certain people that are maybe in our world now. And so, I love that subject, because some people totally believe in past lives. And I actually read recently that a fair majority of people in some poll believe in that. And then some people still, don't necessarily. How do you think that those relationships in our past lives influence our current life? Like, can you tell us a little bit about our karma, or those things that we do have to complete, and what you see are the lessons, or why we have the certain contracts that we have with people in our lives? Can you say more about that?
Sure. Well, on the topic of past lives, I believe in it's multifold. I also believe in genetic memory, and in the last 150 years of sort of real science-focused belief systems, we've forgotten that a lot of the way history and information was passed down in society was through storytelling and that genetic memory. And one of my favorite stories about that is that a friend of mine, her daughter suddenly became fearful of taking a bath at 3 years old. Mm-hmm. And she loved water before that. And she was talking to her mom on the phone, who lived overseas, and said, "Mom, I don't know what's going on with Noemi. She suddenly won't get in the bathtub." And her mom goes, "Oh, when I was about that age, I almost drowned in the bathtub." So here it is, her grandmother that then had a daughter, that then had a grandchild, who had that memory that was triggered that wasn't even hers from a physical level. So that's one channel. And I see when we're doing spiritual work, a lot of times there's these, not just in past lives, but I call them genetic, sort of like genetically inherited programs and pictures that are multi-generational, that have been lovingly passed down or abusively passed down for generation after generation after generation. And then we're like, why am I responding like this? Why can't I stop doing this? Even so that's sort of one strand of it. And then the other strand, the past life piece, is I feel like a lot of times if we have, say, a traumatic experience or an unresolved experience in a past lifetime, or even a wonderfully heart-opening, I'm in love with you, I never want to leave you experience in a past life, we aren't ending it. So, I love how in the marriage ceremonies they always say, "Until death do we part," right? Because you want to actually let your souls separate at death. You don't want to necessarily be forced to be attached to that marriage in your next lifetime. Right. So whether, even if you love the person, right? So you might not come back as a whatever, in the same place, and feel longing your whole life because you never meet each other or something. Yeah. So I really believe that those unresolved things, say loss of a loved one early in life, and then bonding with your sibling in that lifetime, feeling like you helped each other survive, and then like leaving that lifetime with the sense that you need to find each other because you're your only family, otherwise you're lost. So those kind of things that are unconscious, and then you meet someone and you feel attached to them, and then they decide they're not really that attached to you because they're doing a different thing this lifetime, can feel really hurtful, when in truth, it's not about now, right? It's about something that happened in another time and space, but your soul remembers it. And by doing the psychic work, the work around bringing it to present time, seeing it for what it was, and releasing what was left unresolved, then we're free to not feel so much pain and suffering in the present time around something that is complete.
Yeah. That's so juicy. And so how does it work for you? You know, because some of my clients, there's this energy where we think it's hard, that healing is hard, that releasing that energy is hard, and it's really not. And so can you say a little bit about, you know, how you do that, and how do we update and release and heal and let go of that?
That's a great perspective, because I find that a lot of people come in, particularly ones that have not done a session with me, or have only done like one and have gone a year or two between, feeling sort of a little bit worried that it's going to be hard or something, or that it's going to be too much if they're already feeling overwhelmed by things. And then I love it, because whenever I open my eyes after a reading and I look at someone, that's like their whole aura is brighter and they're lighter, and they go and they sleep better, or they're feeling more at peace inside themselves. And so my experience is that, yes, as a soul, looking at ourselves, you know, owning some of the shadow, not, you know, even the ways that we avoid our pain or try to avoid what we're asking for help with. That was a beautiful one this morning with a client. She was just like in the middle of healing something. She suddenly started talking and changed the subject. And lovely, she's such an aware person that I said, that was awesome, because you just helped me see that the last part that didn't want to move was your avoidance. Mm-hmm. And she was like, oh, you're so right. So it's that we're so complex. And well, my experience is that, yes, facing the truth is hard sometimes, but living without it, in my opinion, is harder. There's way more suffering involved in holding on to those broken things, and holding on to things that are holding us back from creating what we want, and avoiding, you know, and suppressing. And there's so much more fear and just general sense of angst or lack or something missing with that path. Yeah.
Yeah. So I often say to my clients that just seeing it, like seeing it, the energy helps it to move. Exactly. Once we bring it to the light of consciousness, and it's not unconsciously running the show, then we can let it go. We can do whatever with it. We have power around it. So is that your experience too, that it's just a matter of identifying these unconscious patterns or pictures or energy, and then we're like, oh, that's what it is, and we heal it?
Naming it, yeah, I really am a believer in that. Naming it and moving it, and you know, we still have habits,
right?
So, like, you know, we can clear the energy around smoking cigarettes, maybe, but you might still have the habit of wanting one, right, or whatever. Right. So I don't know, but yeah. I totally believe that naming it is so powerful, and people sometimes say, so how do you do that? Are you really communicating with something on the other side? And I truly believe I am. I feel that it's about seniority, about really believing and knowing that as a soul, this person's asking me to help them. Therefore, I have seniority, and I've got a body, and that person's got a body and a soul in it. And if they're something that's disturbing them, whether it's a spiritual entity or someone else that's in a physical body's energy invading their space, their psychic space, their physical energetic space, that because of our agreement, I have the seniority to make that other entity or person that's they're not respecting their boundaries move.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's so great. So how did you get into this? Like, did you know from an early age that you had some sort of ability, or how did this path get illuminated for you?
That's a good question. It could be long-winded, but I'll do my best to keep it short or focus. I grew up in a very sort of polarized upbringing in a way, because I had this like free, question everything, atheist, hippie, father, and then this mother that was believed deeply in Christianity, very spiritual, and also more conservative in the belief systems. And so they both added so much potency to my experience. But I also, in that, some of the experiences I had in my life required me to be more attentive psychically to what was going on around me, so that I would feel safe. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, both my parents, they were still together, before they sort of became adults and identified, took a psychic class together, which is something that's funny. I didn't find that out until I've been doing this a long time and finally confessed to them my work. So there was they're both very intuitive people that have used that in their life in different ways. Spiritually in the Christian view from my mom, intuitively a lot in business and decisions my father made. And so then when I was in my late 20s, I was going through divorce, and I was sort of questioning everything and discovering myself as a separate person from my husband and my family even. And I had this really powerful dream that woke me up in the night, and the time had been like sleeping on the couch of my best friend from college, because I had just left my husband. I went into the bathroom and turned the light on because I didn't want to wake her up, and wrote this down. And in it, Dawn Eagle, woman who's my spiritual mentor, came to me, and there were all these jaguars and cats, and I knew I needed to go meet her, even though I was scared because I had all these preconceived fears around what that might mean. But once I did, it began a spiritual path for me that was really more about my own healing. Mm-hmm. And within a couple years, when I was 30, she suggested I go see Michael Tamuro, who's your teacher too.
Yeah.
And he lived in Denver at the time, and his wife, I was sort of scared to see him, so I went to his wife first. And on the way there, she was like, about half an hour before you got here, about 20 angels showed up, and I was wondering, who's coming?
That's awesome.
And then Mike, when I finally had a reading from Michael, he said, well, this is your life work. And I was 30, and I knew I was on a spiritual path, but I just didn't see myself like that. But he suggested I go to Interconnection Institute, because that was a school in Denver, and I lived in Denver. And I started classes there for myself to learn how to understand what I was experiencing. Because I'd always had these experiences of at work and at social activities or in my family, suddenly having my emotions and feelings change, suddenly feeling anger or depression or a wave of some sexual energy that sort of startled me, because I wasn't really interested in that person. Okay. and I'd go, and I just didn't understand it. I didn't know what to translate it, and I didn't have a lens to look at it through. So I started the training to learn those boundaries for myself, so I didn't have to walk into a room and feel everybody's stuff. And that was a huge gift. And so I did training off and on for about 7 years without doing formal readings. I was on my own path. I was doing it for myself. I was practicing the tools, learning my boundaries. And then finally I got to a point where I felt safe enough to where, I was doing readings in the classroom. And then I was like, wow, this feels really good, because I have healthy boundaries and because people are feeling helped by my work. So then I started doing sessions for people. It just sort of organically grew.
That's beautiful. I love that. And I didn't know that about Michael either. That's so great. I love learning new things about people I already know. So there's so much in that. I can totally relate because I feel like my journey also started as self-healing.
Mm-hmm.
And then definitely I was like, I would burst into tears. I would feel all these different emotions. My family thought I was crazy because I would feel everybody's energy and I had no boundaries. And then, like you, I also started having dreams. And, I had dreams of like Durga on the tiger and different white tigers and jaguars, and then like prophetic dreams. And that kind of spurred me. So there's a lot of similarities there on our path. I think that's really neat. So when you went to school there, you were also, because you have this IT job, you have this other world, you're like in both. So how was that process for you when you finally started giving readings and owning it? You mentioned that you like confessed to your parents about what you were doing. Like, when did that become something that you were more comfortable with and you just started telling people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, I've been for over 20 years now working in geographic information systems or mapping software, mapping data from satellite imagery to now I work in at a mobile startup. So we have a mobile application that uses maps within it for routing and visualizing stuff. But I've loved that career. I've not been in love with corporate America very often, so I've left it a couple times to do my work, other work, So I like the analytical part of my mind that I get exercised in that, and keeps me in balance with my psychic work. I've twice, maybe 3 times left, 2 voluntarily, 1 involuntarily, my business jobs, and sort of in a leap of faith to do my own work. And the first time was really ended up being a whole bunch of deep inner work. And then I went back to the business world. And the second time was more to explore doing my clairvoyant work and writing full time, which I did. And it really blossomed. And then I realized I still really liked my IT work. So I went back when somebody offered me a job. And in terms of my family and sort of like contending those 2 worlds, it's taken a lot of time for me. I mean, in my business world, I still, I'm not hiding it, but I don't like volunteer the information. If somebody Googles me, they're going to find my website. And certain customers that I work with in the technology world know about my work because they're interested in it, and that's fine. With my family, it was more like my mom was a bit, I think she didn't understand it, and she was concerned that I might not be accessing a spiritual source for healing assistance that she felt comfortable with. And then several years ago, she allowed me to do a reading for her, and she then was like, wow, okay, this is my daughter. I trust her. She's working with love and light, and so that was a big step for us. And my dad, not, he's not really, like I said, he's a professed atheist, but I think he's a spiritual man in certain ways, and they just don't look like the forms we would call that. And he is, he's never had any judgment on it. He just has been sort of curious about it, but I didn't tell them, mostly because. Why didn't I tell them? Because I wasn't completely clear about it for myself that they would accept me or approve of it.
Yeah.
And it was sort of an interesting. I remember that specific trip when I went out and with the intention that I'm going to tell my mom, I'm going to tell my dad, I'm going to tell my grandma and my grandpa's best friend. My grandparents on my dad's side have been passed for a long time, and it was really quite wonderful, the kind of conversations that emerged from that. So
yeah, that's so beautiful. It sounds like a nice balance. It's like you recognize that sort of like a need to know basis. You don't need to tell everyone in your regular job, and then it sounds like with your family it's been a neat journey.
Yeah, I'm grateful. One of the things that I feel is the biggest gift I received from my family is that few people have, is that my parents, I have felt, have always unconditionally loved me, even when their opinions and beliefs and desires for me differed from my own. Yeah. So, I mean, that's huge. That's a huge thing that most people don't get. So.
Right. Yeah. So if people want to know more about you or work with you, how can they find you? What do you have to offer or share?
Oh, thank you. I have a website, NatalieCutsforth.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter right there on the front page, or I've created a special page just for the folks listening to this recording that says NatalieCutsforth.com/soul. And that's where you can sign up to receive a free copy of my book on soul agreements that I'll be publishing in 2016. I'm going to give out a few free copies of that out. Otherwise, it'll be for sale. So if you sign up for that soon, that list, you'll both get on my mailing list. And for my weekly, I blog just about every other week on topics of intuition. And right now I'm focused on soul agreements. So I do one-on-one clairvoyant readings 2 days a week. I work my IT career 3 days a week, so I also am available for those sessions.
Wonderful. Yay. I'll post those links too, because I want people to go and check it out. And I love your writing, and I just really feel like you bring such a grounded, energy to something that is very ethereal.
Oh, thank you.
So what else would you like to leave us with today? Like, what is alive in you? What is, really on your heart and mind that you're learning in your own personal journey? Like, what sort of juicy wisdom could you share with us today? I know that's a big question.
Yeah. Well, on a personal level, my growth right now is around just realizing where my head has gotten in the way of my heart. And I'm a Leo, I'm a heart person. I love a lot, but I've noticed that I've made a lot of choices in love where I've selected partners and paradigms that put the analytical mind or that intellectual connection before what my heart really needed. And so right now I'm sort of vulnerably teasing around in that area, and just would love other people to explore that and reflect on that in yourself. How can you allow your heart to be more connected with your partner or your lover? And then in the grand scheme of self-awareness, really the why behind, some people say, why should I bother doing this soul work? Why should I bother? Why would I stir it up? Why would I have a clairvoyant reading or do this self-reflection, this inner work? And my why is that I've seen so many possibilities open up in my life. Things that I never imagined were possible. We see what's possible based on what we've been exampled and what we've been exposed to in life. And the more of these layers in this that we can set, release, the more of these unconscious patterns that we can, move out of our space, the more becomes possible in our life. The more there's this infinite possibility that we gain more and more access to through this kind of work, and we don't even have to know about it. That's the amazing part, is if we're open to it, we get to have it.
Yeah. Wow, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I love that so much. And I just admire that, and who you are and who you be too, is just your commitment to that growth and to, just truth and clarity. And so thank you so much for joining with us and sharing your wisdom, and for all the work that you do in the world to assist people in their growth.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. It's an honor, and I really appreciate you and your courage, and bless you and your little bundle of love that's baking up there in your oven.
Yes, thank you. Okay, well, goodbye for today. Namaste.
Namaste.
Bye-bye.